So allow me to present to you a hypothetical scenario. On the one hand, we have an army that is armed with nuclear weapons. On the other hand, we have an army that is not equipped with nuclear weapons. Do we need to know any other parameters about this battle to know who's going to win?
Well, no, because if one army already has nuclear weapons, then they're obviously going to win.
That's right, because a nuclear weapon is an unstoppable offense, and as such, whoever has nuclear weapons is going to win the battle. That's how important offense is. So, welcome everyone. This is the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Braun Bafflestone, and today I have with me my lovely assistant,
Adelina.
And this is the 6th installment of my 7-part series on what I call the 7 tactical aspects of combat, which, to remind you, are
Terms of engagement. 1. 2. Maneuverability. 3. Environment. 4. Resource management. 5. Efficiency. 6. Offense. And 7. Defense.
That's correct. And today we are going to be talking about offense, because as a power gamer, we are going to want to be able to destroy every creature that crosses our path. We are going to have very good offense. And when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons, I think about several different aspects of offense. I don't have a rigorous system, but there are many things that I try to keep in mind as I'm assembling a suite of offense to engage my enemies. What is the first thing, Adelina?
We have damage versus conditions, or blaster versus control. Division of labor.
That's correct. Look, 99% of the time, you are going to kill things by doing damage to them and reducing them to 0 hit points. There are a couple of spells which will kill things outright, but most of the time, you need to do damage. Now, you can do damage in 2 ways. 1, through weapon strikes and cantrips, totally renewable resources, or through spell slots, which are non-renewable resources. However, to create battlefield conditions or controls, you basically require spells. Weapon strikes can create the prone condition through the shove attack or grapple, but that's not much. Most battlefield control must come through spells. And you only get a certain number of spell slots in this game. 5th edition has very few relative to previous editions. So I believe in dividing the labor. Let characters with weapon attacks or cantrips kill things and reserve spell slots for battlefield control and for conditions. So that doesn't mean that there's no place for blasters. There is something to be said for burst damage, because the faster you kill something, the less time it has to try and kill you. And sometimes the numbers work in your favor. Perhaps it's a large area of effect and you're affecting a large number of creatures, and the damage adds up to have a very large impact. But generally speaking, I believe in using spells to create conditions in battlefield control and weapons and cantrips to do damage. What is the next one, Adelina?
Concentration. Lead with it. No redundancy and wide variety of scenarios.
Yes, we have only one concentration spell that we can cast at one time. So generally we want a good one, and we are going to be laying it down in round 1. So 1, you want no redundancy. You don't want multiple concentration spells prepared that accomplish the same thing, because you can only use one of them at a time. And you also want to have a wide variety of concentration spells available depending on the scenario that you are facing. For example, my character carries 3 concentration control spells: Sleet Storm, Hypnotic Pattern, and Slow. Now, I like Sleet Storm because it is devastating against enemy spellcasters. It creates heavy obscurement, which limits the number of spells they can cast, and forces a very difficult concentration check against them. However, sometimes obscurement is problematic for my party. in which case I might opt for a hypnotic pattern, which is absolutely lethal against creatures against whom it works, but is limited in its conditions for use. It does not work in Obscurement because it requires line of sight. It does not affect many creatures, as charm, immunity, and resistance is fairly common. And it creates friendly fire, so I cannot use it if my party members are in the area of effect. If that's the case, then I have slow, because slow does work in Obscurement. Slow does not create friendly fire, and it affects every creature in the game. So just an example, but keeping in mind, I want to have a range of options based on the creatures that I'm facing. What's the next one, darling?
Attack roll versus saving throw. Gaining advantage.
Yes, so as a spellcaster, you are going to have many spells that create awesome conditions that require saving throws, but make sure you have some ranged attack options. Generally, in normal combat, you are going to have a slightly better chance of sticking one over the other. But if you are able to create attacks at advantage, which is a lot easier in this game than creating saves at advantage, then the numbers can very heavily skew in favor of the ranged attack option. So you are going to want to make sure that you have a couple. Next.
Next, we have versus Obscurement.
Versus Obscurement. This is another reason that we are going to want to have some ranged options, because if we ever face Obscurement, then we cannot use spells that require line of sight, and we are going to need some options. Generally speaking, against Obscurement, ranged attacks work, or attack rolls work, and saving throws don't work. Now, there are some exceptions. I have already mentioned slow, which inflicts a saving throw and does work in Obscurement. But generally speaking, if you are in conditions of Obscurement, you are going to need some spells that use attack rolls. What's the next thing I'd like to think about?
Next, we have immunities, save types, energy types, and effort types.
Yes, there are a lot of creatures out there with a wide variety of immunities. And so if you encounter a creature that is immune to one of your favorite tactics, you are going to need to have alternate tactics. You are going to need to have spells that attack different saving throws. You are going to have spells that create different energy types. And you are going to have spells that create different effects.
Next, we have friendly fire.
Friendly fire. Ideally, you will be winning initiative or inflicting surprise and acting very close to the top of the turn order, and you will be able to drop a juicy, powerful concentration spell on your enemies before your party engages. However, sometimes you are in suboptimal conditions and your party is in the area of effect, and then you cannot use spells that create friendly fire. As such, I always like to ensure to have an option or two that I can use that friendly fire is not a consideration.
Creature types. Outsiders, undead, elementals, banished turning.
Yes, there are a number of creatures that you can encounter that are very difficult if you don't have the right spells to deal with them, and pretty easy if you do have the right abilities to deal with them. So try to think ahead and have those abilities. Banish is fantastic if you are facing outsiders or elementals. If you can turn undead, there are a lot of specialty attacks that you can use against various creature types. Try to have as many in your back pocket as possible.
Versus legendary saves. Buffs, Obscurement, attack rolls, no save spells.
Eventually, you're going to fight something with legendary saves. And then all of those super cool spells that require saving throws are going to be basically useless. You're going to want to have options in case you run into a creature with legendary saves. The way to beat a creature like that is generally through lots and lots of weapon strikes. So you are going to want to use your spells to do things like buff the fighters. You're going to want to use it to inflict conditions that incur no saving throw, like Obscurement. For example, you are going to want to have powerful ranged attack options, and ideally you will also be able to cast spells that are offensive spells that require no saving throw, although there are very few. Early levels, you got Magic Missile, and then it takes a while until you get to Wall of Force, which is probably the next one.
Anti-magic zone. Weapons, poisons, acid, oil alchemist's fire, Caltdrop's ball bearings.
Yes, anti-magic zones. They exist in this game. You might encounter a beholder as well. So think ahead. Have some options for fighting in an anti-magic zone. Even if you're a spellcaster, you're going to want to have a weapon available, for example, a hand crossbow, and you are going to want to have a range of offensive options that will work without magic. Poisons are fantastic. There's equipment like acid and alchemist fire and oil and chains and other things that you can use if you are, God forbid, ever finding yourself trying to win a battle in an anti-magic zone. So I think that's it. I think that's pretty much all of the things that I like to consider when I'm putting together an absolutely devastating offense befitting a power gamer. So thanks for watching. Please tune in next time when I talk about defense in the final installment of the 7-part series on the 7 tactical aspects of combat. This has been the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Braun Bafflestone. This is my assistant,
Adelina.
Thanks for watching, and see you next time.